We have candid conversations because we like to give people the real. Well, we already live already. See, and I always do that. I just start
Okay.
talking.
I think
So
it's we're on.
we are live, guys, as you can see, and I want to welcome you guys to another self-love conversations. We have a very, very special woman in the house. I mean, when you talk about someone who has really been on her grind, has been doing it as an entrepreneur, who is a visionary, a creator, a Canadian playwright, a author. She got a TED talk. She done plenty of interviews. She got plays. She got everything. This lady, Miss Trey Anthony, it is such a blessing for you to be here. And I can't wait to just dive into everything that you have to offer us because I think just your value alone is really going to do us some very good. So I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. This is amazing.
Absolutely. So I want to know, and just like the beginning, I know you have the book and everything, but I
Yes.
want to know, and this is something we ask all the women,
Mhm.
is when you look at yourself then and now, what do you see when you look in the mirror?
Oh, damn. You going in, girl. You ready to start with those light
I'm
questions?
serious.
Then and now, I think one of the things that I really suffered from then was this I wanted everybody to like me and
Yeah.
love me.
Mhm.
And so I think I went about that in really problematic ways. I think I sacrificed a lot of my own well being in order to make people like me. I had very little boundaries whatsoever. Anyone who wanted access to me could gain access. And I think now I would not say I'm totally cured from the everybody love me um, theme in my life, but I am much more conscious of
Yeah.
it. I'm much more aware of it. And I work on it every single day to be like, no means no. And that's okay. Not everybody's going to agree with you. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everyone is going to always give you a standing ovation. And you've
Right.
got to be okay with that. And I think the
How
more,
long did it take you to get there?
girl, um, I would say it's been a work in progress because I
Mm.
don't think you ever get to that final destination. I think you journey along that destination, and some days are better than others. But I would say I began consciously being aware of the work that I needed to do to be on this journey, I
Right.
would say about 3 years ago.
Right. But
Yeah,
Trey, you did a whole play
a whole damn play.
and you had a whole damn TV show.
I sure did.
And you have been doing like big things. I can just imagine the constraints and the challenges and everything that you face, even just trying to be an entrepreneur and really get your dreams out
Mm-hmm.
and to battle with yourself, to battle with the self-esteem and everything to even produce that. When you think back then, how was that? How did you persevere? Because that's what we really want to know. How did you push past your fears to actually do it? Because guys, I'm telling you, if you Google this lady and you see the plate and everything, you can see that, she has done and continue to do big things. And it's like, how did you push past that so that you can actually reach a goal and live your dream?
Mm-hmm. I would definitely say I come from parents and family who are, my mother is a single mom who had me at 17. I have a Jamaican grandmother. And if you know anything about Jamaicans, that stereotype about having 29 jobs is
Yep,
so
yep.
true,
Mhm.
right? So I was raised with that work ethic. I was also raised by a grandmother who used to really instill in me that you're special. That
Right.
was her nickname for me. She was like, you're special.
Mm.
And I don't know, and I definitely will say, I won't say I don't know. I definitely think that made me walk through the world in a very different way because I think my grandmother talked life into me
Right.
by saying that you were special. And she would say, you're not like everybody else. And I was born with like 3 gray hairs in the middle of my head. And
Mm-hmm.
so my grandmother would say, you are marked by God. And
Oh,
so God is always on your side. So
yes,
I
he
walked around
is.
with that kind of
Yeah. So,
inner knowledge, right? Of like, I don't know if you know, but I know
yep, that
I'm
I'm
marked
marked
by
by
God.
God. Right.
Right? And so I think because of that, I had a level of conviction and definitely a level of audacity for a
Mm,
young Black girl. And I think you have to have that because there's going to be so many people who are going to say someone like you cannot do X, Y, or Z, or no one has done that before. And, you know, I came from a very working class background. Don't make that accent fool you. Because I think people always assume because I speak like how I speak, that I grew up with money or went to fancy schools. I grew up in what's called Toronto housing in
yeah.
Rexdale, which is quote unquote the projects in Toronto. And I just knew that I wanted greatness and I wanted to make a mark. And I was really committed to doing stuff and projects that featured and focused on Black women
Mm-hmm.
because I was not seeing myself anywhere. And so, even for me, when I did the play, The Kink in My Hair, which was my first play
Right.
that then got adapted into a TV show, it was because I was so tired of going to auditions and I was being auditioned for Black Girl on Welfare #1 or Baby
Gotcha.
Mama #2. And I remember my grandmother one day, I came home from an audition and I was crying. And I said, they just keep giving me these shitty auditions. And my grandmother's words were, well, if they're writing shit, then write your own shit. And that's how I started writing. Like it was one of those things. She was like, stop complaining. And that's what I grew up with. That nobody, sometimes to my own detriment, no one coddled me. No one was kind of like, oh, woe is you, poor you. It's kind of like,
Right.
okay, so what you gonna do about it?
Right.
What's next? And so that's how I move through the world at all times. And sometimes I have to remember that part about being softer with myself and giving myself the coddling because I did not grow up with women figures in my life who believed in handling you in a soft way. It was kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, you got to get this shit done, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
do it,
Been
right?
there. Been there. I got to show you how to survive. I got to show you how to be
Yes,
out there. Been there.
yes,
Right. And so
exactly.
you're you did the play, you persevered through that because I was doing my research, I was studying, and I came across your YouTube video and I was just sitting up there and I was just like, oh my God. When you was like, we didn't get the grant money for the flights. We were trying to put on a play. I actually called the theater and told the theater that I wasn't coming, but you know what? Everybody got together and was like,
Yeah.
we're gonna make this happen, and the actors and everything. And I could just see the look on your face where you was just like, you know what? I I was so shocked myself that we got this done. You know what I'm saying? And then I watched the video when you did your final closeout and you was like, the kink in my hair, it is done.
Girl,
The brand has come to an end. And I was
girl,
like,
that play and that TV show just aged me beyond years.
I know,
Like it
'cause
killed
you
me.
was
It killed
like,
me. Literally. I came back from the dead millions of
oh,
times from that show.
oh, because
Yeah.
I was like, wow, you know what? But you did it though. But that's the
Yes.
thing. That's the thing that I try to tell the women here.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you have this goal, if
Mm-hmm.
you even though you go through hell, only because it's your first time doing it, right?
Yeah.
And you really don't know the ins and outs. So you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. But once you do it, then you know what to do next time and you know what to do next time. And now we got an upcoming book, Black Girls in Love with Herself, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That book couldn't have been created if we didn't have the kink in my hair play.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Because it's a stepping stone. And
Yeah.
a lot of times I mentor a lot of younger women. And I think because we're in this era of Instagram and Facebook, that people are under the impression that when you're reading people's success stories and quote unquote their highlight reels, that things are happening automatically and instantaneously.
Right.
And I always say it takes a minute and then some. Like, you're always building. I can't tell you how many times I've quote unquote failed. I can't tell
Mhm.
you how many times I have lost money on a deal. I can't tell you how many times I've read a bad critique of my work and myself and been like, I'm out of here. I can't tell you how many times people have said no. But I've always had this rule of, I give myself 24 hours to
Mhm.
cry, scream, say the world is unfair, this is, sexist, racist, whatever it could be, right? And then I'm like, okay, what are we going to do next?
Right.
And I think, like you said, there was a quote I read, a meme going around on Instagram, where it says, the next time you do this, you're not starting from the beginning, you're starting from experience.
Exactly.
And I'm a big believer in that. Anytime something has gone wrong, it has been a way for me to say, okay, how am I going to correct this? And that's in business, that's in love, that's in personal relationships, friendships, you name it. That
Right.
there's always a lesson to be learned in the quote unquote mistake of, how can I now do this differently?
Right. Where did you get the inspiration to buy the book? Did you feel like it was time, or was it something that you saw
Yeah.
around you? What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, it's so funny. I had just ended a relationship about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I'm one of those people, when I end a relationship as a writer, I'm always writing about it, right? So I
Mhm.
always write my best
Mhm.
stuff because I'm
Mhm.
hurt, I'm
Right.
angry, I'm
Right.
reflective. So, like, all of my exes are like, oh, she gonna write some shit now.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I wrote this piece called If I Was a Black Girl in Love with Myself. And
Mhm.
I submitted it to Huffington Post, and the piece went viral. And it was like, just like this news article. But in the piece, I wrote, like, if I was a Black girl in love with myself, I would like examine the relationships that I had with my mother and see that, I'm not my mother's, I'm not the exact replica of my mother. I would look at the relationship that I've had with my father. I would also look at the relationships of how I choose to be in loverships with other people, and how I give of myself too much and not expect anything back. I said I would also go to therapy. I would send roses and flowers to myself. So I'm paraphrasing all of these things, but at the end, the thing was, I realized that I wasn't loving myself enough. And so I was turning
Exactly.
to other people to fix all of those things. And the only way you can love yourself enough is being a Black girl in love with yourself. So
Mhm.
I wrote this piece, and it went viral. And then I approached a book agent around turning it into a book. So first they said, no, we don't think, it's too niche. And so I said, okay. And so then I self-published a journal,
Yeah.
and it was called The Black Girl in Love with Myself, a day planner. And I printed 5,000 copies myself, and I basically sold them out of the back of my car. Like, I went to hairdressing salons.
Because you've been
I showed
chosen.
up.
That's
Yeah,
why those gray hairs came back. You were
they came
chosen.
back. And I sold it wherever I could. I spoke about the book. One woman bought the book and gave it to her professor at Harvard, and they
Mhm.
asked me to come and speak at Harvard, and that was kind of how I got some more recognition around it. And then I went back again to another book agent, and I said, I want to now write this book
Yeah.
on self-love. Like, I feel Black women have been left out of the self-help space. And I had been a big fan of, Rachel Hollis, Gabrielle Bernstein, Louise Hay. But
Mhm.
all of these women, as much as I related to them as a Black woman, I did not see myself in these spaces. And all of the women that I was following around self-help were white.
Right.
And so at one point, the agent that I got sent it out to numerous publishers. And at one point, she called me and she was like, it's not going to happen. Nobody, I cannot sell this book. And
Mhm.
I was like, oh. And then I was like, well, have you tried? And she was like, hey, right. She goes, you have to learn to accept no. And she
Mhm.
said, Trey, no is no. I cannot sell this book. And I was like, well, could you try? And she basically hung up on me. And then she sent me an email telling me that my contract with her was now void, and she no longer wanted to work with me because I had unrealistic expectations. And I was like, all right, girl.
Okay.
I was like, all right.
Okay. Mhm.
Because I'm one of those people, when you kind of tell me that I can't do something, I'm even more determined,
Right.
right?
And no means not right now,
Not
maybe in the
exactly.
future, or, it's like, okay.
Exactly. So I said,
Mhm.
okay. So what I did, girl, is I then started thinking about publishers, which I liked, and Hay House was one of them. And I realized they were the biggest self-help publishers in North America. And so I was like, I'm going to go to Hay House.
Mhm.
So I was bold enough. I wrote a book proposal. I contacted the editor at Hay House and I sent it to her. And it was so funny. This goes to show you when you just don't know something, you just don't know something. So she wrote me back and she was like, you need an agent.
Yeah, you
And I
do.
said, I don't have one. I just actually got fired. And then she said, and your book proposal is wrong. Right?
Oh,
Like the whole
okay.
format and everything is wrong. And I was like, I said, okay. I said, thank
My
you for the
bad. I'll
feedback.
be back. Yeah.
And I said, could you send me an example of a
Yeah.
successful book proposal? And she just
Hmm.
sent it to me. She goes, this is what you follow. And I said, okay,
Wow.
I'm going to get back to you in 4 weeks. And I followed it as much as I could. And I sent it to her. And she wrote back and she said, I really admire your tenacity. She
Hmm.
goes, you are something else. She goes, I did not think to hear back from you. And she said, okay, I'm going to send it out. We'll see what happens. And if it bites, I'll bring it into a meeting. And I'm telling you, it took about 6 months. I did not hear
Yeah.
anything. And I always kept sending a little email going, hey, Allison, how you
Yeah.
doing, girl? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
going to be in New York. We can grab tea. And I just kept developing this relationship. And then one day, 6 months later, she said, Trey, we're going to publish your book. You got a book deal.
Wow.
And
Look
that's
at
how it happened. And I did
that.
it on my own. I
That
did it
is
on my own.
amazing. That
Yeah.
is amazing. So,
Yeah.
what is the book about? So, are you giving us some self-care
Yeah.
tips? Are you telling us how to, get ourselves together? Because our struggle is
Mhm.
different as Black women.
Yes.
You
Yes.
you dealing with being a single mother. You dealing
Mhm.
with especially your past traumas,
Yeah.
the many hats that you have to wear,
Mhm.
and that mask. That's what we say. That mask that
Math.
you have
Yeah.
to wear all the time. You
Yes.
know.
Yes. 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 The book deals with so many issues that we face as Black women. The first chapter is called I Got It From My Mama.
Yeah.
And I delve into, as I mentioned before, this strong Black woman trope that we carry, right? How so many of us are raised by women who tell us, right? Like, you got to get back up. There's no room for crying. There's no room for vulnerability. And how often that leads to us being really amazing women and really strong women, but it also leads to burnout. It also leads to us taking on way more than we should. It also leads to us not asking for any help from anybody.
Right.
And I talk about my own issues around that, of how I basically nearly went into the hospital with a heart attack while
Mhm.
filming The Kink in My Hair, opening a wellness center, taking care of my terminally ill grandmother, because all of those things were just basically pushed onto me.
Right.
And I didn't know how to say no because I was the strong, capable Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's another chapter that deals with friends. Like, how do we pick our friends? Like, a lot of us who are the A-type personalities, we like to be the ones who fix everybody's life. And yet when we turn around, there's nobody
Not a
around,
soul.
right? Not a soul who's there
Nobody.
to help us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I talk about how do we start to pick our sister circle and be much more selective. There's also another chapter on the microaggressions that we face as Black women in the workplace. Like, how often have we been called the angry Black woman, or quote unquote difficult or challenging to work with because we've spoken up, where, other white women have space to, break down and cry in a meeting, and we
Right.
can't do those things, right?
No, not at
And the
all.
higher we go up the ladder, the few faces like ours that we see. So I give,
Mm-hmm.
advice on how do we deal with that? How do we have support? I talk about our relationships with our fathers,
Mm.
and also how we pick men in our lives. If you're queer, women in your lives, your partnerships, how do you pick those, and how do they mirror what you have seen in your own life, right? Because we
Absolutely.
unconsciously create these patterns in our own life of what we have seen or not seen, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
what feels familiar,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's also a chapter on money and our relationship with money and finances. And I talk about my own self of growing up with a single mom who, we didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up with a lot of shame around having, like, being the kid who had free lunches, right? Who then went to a very upscale, middle class neighborhood school. And I had this level of shame around always thinking that I wasn't good enough. So I always worked and worked and worked and worked and made money, made money, made money. And then I picked a partner who I thought was very successful and who was really wonderful. And then I kind of leaned back and I realized I overlooked a lot of things because I walked into that relationship with my own money shame, thinking that my partner was better with money, my partner was much more successful. And so I overlooked a lot of things in order to stay in that relationship because I went in there not complete. I hadn't completed my journey of going, you're no longer the little girl in your bed, hearing your mother crying about what bill to pay next,
You
right? You
sound like
are,
me.
yes, yes.
Your life and my life sounds the same, where, I married someone because I felt like he had a good family,
Yes.
right? Because I'm coming from a mom
Mm-hmm.
who died of AIDS, who was an addict, who
Mm.
had 6 kids and 5 different fathers, and there's no father that's available. So you grow up with grandma because she dies early. And then you
Yeah.
say, I want to be able to have a family, right?
Yes,
I
girl.
want
Yes.
to, this
Mm-hmm.
person has a mother, a father, and a sister. Wow,
Mm-hmm.
that is, it's like, wow,
Yes.
that is amazing. I want
Yeah.
that, right? And then you fall in love with your idea of
Yeah.
what
The idea. Yes. Yes. Yes.
marriage and life
Mm-hmm.
is supposed to be like. So, like you, I'm very ambitious. And when I got married, I was still ambitious, but I was like, he got it. He's okay.
Yes.
He can do everything. And he like, no, I don't. Because he's used to, mother, father working and
Yes.
everything is a team effort, right?
Yes.
So when we go into these relationships, like you said, we fall in love with our own ideas on what we think a relationship would be, where we really don't even look at the person.
Exactly. Yes. We
So
don't, because we are so invested in the image of what we think we wanted as that little girl. So we
correct.
overlook so many things because we are so committed to
Yep.
having what we thought we were missing in our childhood. And so we show up as these little broken, fragile girls, and then we do not show up as an equal. And then that imbalance happens in a relationship, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you realize you have no power, no voice in the relationship, no anything, because you showed up fractured.
Mm,
And that's exactly what happened to me. And one day my partner just turned around and said, hey, I don't want this. And
right.
I had no idea. I did not see it coming. I really did not see it. I was
You're
kind
like,
of like,
well,
oh,
what you mean? What happened?
yeah, what happened? What happened here? What do you mean you don't want this?
Right.
What do you mean you don't want this? Well, I
Right.
want this.
Right.
And so that was really, and I talk about it in the book, like when that was my rock bottom,
Yeah.
right? I went from this powerhouse couple of, people posting couple goals
Yeah.
under my Facebook and Instagram and being really invested, to basically being homeless. I had a newborn to raise. My whole world turned upside down in exactly a minute.
Right.
And that was where, and I had to build, but I also had to take ownership and say,
Absolutely.
how did I get here? This just did not happen to me. I chose this.
Come on, girl. Now that's
Right?
a big step for you
Yes.
to say that I chose this, because most of us
Mm-hmm.
want to play the victim
Yes, girl.
and say that it is not our fault, it is your fault. You're the
Yes.
reason. And that's where I had to forgive my ex-husband and
Yes.
say, you know
Yes.
what? I apologize because I fell in love with the idea of what I thought you should be. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even see you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I chose is really not in front of me. I chose this because I thought in here,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, that broken little girl. But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, now that I'm in it, I'm saying, you know what? You chose this. This is you. You
Yeah.
have to take ownership of this.
Yes.
And that's
Yes,
hard to do. That is very
it
hard to
is.
do
It's very hard
because
because
it's
it's
easy
very
to
easy.
blame. It is
It's
easy to blame.
easy to blame and say you did X, Y, and Z, but sometimes you have to take that ownership and
Absolutely.
say, okay, how did I contribute to this? Maybe you didn't do it all by yourself, but you definitely contributed to it,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And so that's what I talk about in the book. And also, I talk about therapy. Therapy
Mm,
has been my saving grace.
right.
And I know as Black women, sometimes where I remember when I told my mother that I was going to therapy, my mother, I said in the book, she basically choked on her rice and peas and chicken. She was like,
What's wrong with you? You crazy? Is there
you
something wrong? I didn't what you need that for?
what do you need that for, right? And it was kind of like, no, only white people do that. Like, we don't
Yep.
have no money and time for that
Right.
nonsense. So I talk about just this whole mistrust that we have around therapy, around also naming depression, naming anxiety, naming I need support, and also that whole thing of, um, you've got this, girl, you
That's
got
right.
this. No, I ain't got
That's
it.
right.
I
That's
don't
right.
actually got it at this moment. I ain't got it, and I
That's right.
want to be okay with telling you I ain't got it. And
That's
how
right.
do we show up vulnerable and say, you
Mm,
know what, today I ain't got it, and I'm
mm,
okay with telling you as my sister and as my friend I ain't got it, right?
that's right.
Because I write in the book, I say a lot of us, and I was guilty of it too,
Hmm.
of always writing and, giving, these Angela Davis fist in the air
Yes, girl.
support signs to all of my
Mhm.
girlfriends and being like, girl, you
You
got
can handle
this.
it. You
Yeah,
got it.
yeah,
You can do it. Don't
you can
worry
do it.
about it. You strong. And it's
Yes.
like,
Instead of just saying, hey, girl, I'm going to give you the space to maybe
right.
you want to cry about this.
That's
Maybe
right.
I need to show up at your house with some food for you. Maybe I need to order a massage. Maybe I need to just listen,
Right.
right? I don't need to tell you you got it, because
Right.
a lot of times that sends the wrong messaging to us, that we cannot say, I'm scared, I'm
Right.
broken, I'm vulnerable. And so that is what I feel the book really gives permission to us as Black women to
Hmm.
show up in our
That's
most vulnerable way, and to also really just re examine the messaging that we have given ourselves and also given to each other, right?
Ooh, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you gotta, I know we're running out of time. You gotta come back and we gotta take this book and crack it open and we
Girl,
gotta
yes.
get into it. We gotta get into our safe space. We do this Empower Her Soul where we come
Mm-hmm.
together and we talk in our safe space. It's not on social media and we really just dive into everything.
I love that.
I would love for you to come because the stories you hear are amazing. And we do talk about those things about letting go and being vulnerable
Yes.
and try to live our highest and truest self. So
I
but let
love
us
that.
know how to get the book, how to follow you, everything.
Oh, I love that, Chloe. Yes. So definitely you can go to the Hay House website. You can also follow me at Black Girl in Love on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm Trey Anthony. In Atlanta, Karis Books is carrying my book, and you can pre-order it. You can
Okay.
also go to my website, treyanthony.com, and that's Trey Anthony.com, and you can order the book. And I just want to really stress to women, especially the Black women who are watching, that this is the first time we've had a book dedicated solely to us.
Hmm.
And I always say one of the successes that I had, and one of the main reasons of my success, is that Black women stood with me at all times and said, I'm going to support you. And then I was able to open doors and hire other Black women and put them in positions of power. And with this book, it's the first time a major self-help publisher is taking a risk on this. And so we need to sell it out. It has to become a bestseller. Buy copies for your friends, your sisters, bring it around to the hairdressing shop. You do whatever you got to do, girl, to make this
Absolutely. I
happen.
am so proud of you too because I looked at Hay House and what they expect and what they want and everything and I said the same thing. I was like, "Damn, I don't see anything that is African American that is
Yes.
solely, for Black women." So, absolutely, we're going to do our part to make sure that we help you. with your
Oh,
book
thank
and
you so
all
much.
out there. I want you to come to our Empower Her Soul so we
Oh,
can
definitely.
gather
I'm
some
there, girl.
people
I'm there.
so we can, look at the book and dive in and talk about it and do all those good girlfriend things that we used to do back in the day to keep our spirits lifted. You know what I'm saying? How mom and her friends used to get together in the house and play cards and talk and do all that stuff or whatever.
We need
You
that.
know,
We need that.
all that girlfriend time. So
I
Trey,
love
thank
that.
you so much for being here.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for having me. And I just want to say thank you for providing this space for women. It's so
Absolutely.
important. And I just want to say, sister, I see you.
Ah,
And your work is needed and valued. So thank
thank
you.
you. I see you too. And most definitely, we're going to connect again. Okay.
For sure.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.
You too. Okay. Bye bye.